Hello, everyone, and welcome to Goliath Cybersecurity Group's podcast called Cyber Insanity. I'm your host, Andrew Berkuta, along with
Angelo, Longo. How you doing today?
doing well. Today, we have a special guest with us, Dr. Rick Kiper from Kiper Tech. And this is along our series a bit, and it kind of crosses two series for you. So I hope you enjoy this. The first series was continuing the people, process, and technology, focusing on process and that with respect to incident response and forensics, but also for the series, this is not like the movies. So we'll get a little bit into that. But welcome, Rick, and I was wondering if you can just kind of do a little introduction of who you are, what are some of the things you've done or worked in, and maybe some interesting projects you can share with our audience today.
Sure, absolutely. I was a special agent and forensic examiner with the FBI for 20 years. I recently retired. I actually started out as a physics teacher, a high school physics teacher, prior to coming into the FBI and got involved in the internet, taught some of the basic stuff to my students. This is before the World Wide Web was really popular. Assigned a lot of assignments, taught them how to develop web pages and things like that, even before we had a server. And then when we went online, we were the first web server in the county. And we had over 1,000 web pages developed by my physics students that we could immediately put online. So that was kind of cool. I was recruited into the FBI in 99. They weren't interested in computer stuff at that time. They were only interested in my Spanish language. They said, if you could speak Spanish and pass this test, you're in. Today, they are absolutely interested in computer stuff. So, highly encourage people to take a look at that. When I got into the FBI, started in white collar crime, organized crime, did a lot of big fraud cases, forex exchange fraud, and that sort of thing. And I was a big customer of computer forensics at that time, meaning that when I went out and I did searches and we collected computers and things like that, it went to a team at the FBI called the Computer Analysis Response Team, or CART.
Okay.
And yeah, yeah. And so the CART folks are the ones that actually processed all the digital evidence that I collected in my investigations. And then I said, well, this is kind of cool, and I have some computer skills. Why don't I do that? So I got on the OJT and started with CART. So and then as time went on, I began to teach for CART. And then I actually taught the teachers. I was involved in the instructor development program for
Wow.
the FBI. And since I had a CART background, I actually taught the instructors of the computer forensic examiners in the FBI. So that was a lot of fun. Some of the cases I worked on, more than half of all computer forensic cases in the FBI are unfortunately child pornography cases, or today they're calling it CSAM in all the legal paperwork that I see. One of the more famous ones I had was a congressional staffer for a Texas congressman. And the interesting thing about this one is this is one of the bigger ones, so I was able to apply all of the things that I learned in the SANS Institute, if you're familiar with that.
Yes.
There's a guy named Rob Lee who teaches the DFIR program, authored a couple of courses. But anyway, he really stressed timeline analysis. Okay, and that's sort of relevant to what we're going to talk about today. But basically, taking all the artifacts and putting all the artifacts in a spreadsheet format so you can get timeline. And when you have that timeline of things that are going on, you have a better chance of user attribution. Okay, we can attribute things that we see to actual users. And with that case, the congressional staffer case, I did a great timeline I was able to demonstrate that he received. Not only did he receive it via email, but he unzipped it. He created a folder for it. Through shell bags, I was able to determine when he went into the folder and he viewed it, and all the different forensic artifacts that went into demonstrating that intent basically for this guy.
Right.
And there was a DOJ attorney that they assigned to this because it was very, it was kind of high profile. And I created 150 trial exhibits for this case.
Ooh.
And I was all ready to go because the defense attorney was the same defense attorney in the sniper case. Do you remember that? Um, the guy that killed the American sniper. And so I was ready to go. And then literally at 11 o'clock on the Friday before the Monday trial, he decided to plead guilty. So, yeah, it was kind of a disappointment. Yeah, it was a disappointment. One of the characters that he exchanged child pornography with was a guy who went by the handle Mesquite Man Panties. And
Wow.
from Mesquite, Texas. And I was so looking forward to talking about Mr. Mesquite Man Panties on the stand, but it didn't happen. So sorry.
As,
um,
as tragic as that is, it is weird. It is nice to see that at least the justice system rolled and made something happen here. So that's a very positive note in that thought. Although a Mesquite Man Panties was a missed opportunity. So, but now here you go.
Well, it was such
That's the
iron
guy I
clap
wanted
that
to
they
go after.
plated. So there you go. So job
Yeah.
well done. So I guess CART is not kind of, and this is kind of where we get with our other topic of this is not how it is in TV. So CART is not kind of like our Criminal Minds episode where people jumping out of helicopters on ropes, rappelling down, and somebody with fuzzy things on her computer goes in and is able to show every aspect of your life and from your home cameras or the street cameras or whatever. I mean, this is clearly dispelling that, I would imagine.
Well, I'll tell you what. After I retired, I started teaching um, overseas. I mean, I did a lot of teaching for the FBI, so it kind of prepared me very well for teaching for other companies. And I was in Abu Dhabi about 2 years ago when I started to begin my digital forensics block
Okay.
on with two videos, and I showed them two videos. One is I don't know if you've seen this on YouTube. It's called the Let's Enhance video, and it's a compilation. It's like a supercut of all these different, CSI type of shows, and it has MacGyver in there. It's got a bunch,
Oh,
and
wow.
they're all saying, enhance, and zoom in on the reflection of the eyeball, enhance, zoom in, enhance. Like you can, you could take a grainy video
Right.
camera, and if the license plate is 1 pixel, you can take that 1 pixel and blow it up, and you get a number, right?
And
Um,
crystal clear too.
and crystal clear. That's what enhance. So let's enhance. If you get a chance to look at that, it's about a couple of minutes long. But then I showed them a clip of Futurama, and I'm not a huge fan or a big follower of Futurama, but they do have a very short scene, and it's also called Let's Enhance. And the commander of this ship says, "Okay, zoom in on this Death Star looking thing," and they zoom in, and it's all pixely. And he says, "Why is it still blurry?" And the attendant says, that's all the resolution we have. Just blowing it up doesn't make it clearer." And I asked the students, which is more realistic, the cartoon or all of these TV shows that we see and watch? And obviously, the Futurama episode highlighted the fact that, there are limitations to what we can do.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Anecdotally, along those same lines, my daughter asked me, "Hey, we're watching the first Star Wars again," and she goes, "Hey, where's the CGI in here?" I'm like, "It's paintings in the background. There was models and paintings. This is what they
Yeah.
did back then. Not like there was no computer creating some type of vast experience that you could walk into." So timelines. Back to that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I guess really we want to touch on incident response and forensics, right? By definition, what do you in a cybersecurity? Because it has different pillars you can apply, but incident response and forensics, how do you define that today?
Yeah, and usually, I guess we usually consider it DFIR together, digital forensics, incident response. Devin Ackerman, who is a former FBI agent and used to work in our program as well, has a great website called aboutdfir.com. It's got a lot of great information about both sides of this. I mean, incident response is basically handling the problem as it's happening, right? Or trying to address a problem as it's happening. Although if you look at um, all of the models for incident response, all of the frameworks you can say for incident response, they all begin with like prepare. As the first step. The first step is to prepare for the incident response, right?
Huh.
Um, and then, digital forensics comes along when we're talking about, the preservation. We preserve the hard drives. We preserve the memory. We want to take memory dumps of everything we can. I mean, and we recommend to people also. I mean, if at the very least, tell us, get an idea of what the processes are. Do a process dump. Send it to a text file. At least preserve some things, and that's in the digital forensics world. That's what we're talking about. The identification of forensic evidence and the collection of it and the preservation of it. Um, and then once we have it preserved, then we can work off of the preserved copy called a digital forensic image. We can work off of that, keep the original, locked up. And then we point all of our forensics tools at that, and we do an examination, which parses out all the information and makes it human readable. And then either we or someone that we're working with, the case agent, will then go in and do the analysis, which is finding out the relevant portions of that data that's relevant to the case. And then at the end of the day, we extract that data and we present it at trial. And all the digital forensic examiners in the FBI have to go through not only the sort of the academic and hands-on digital forensics training, but we also go through a moot court where we defend our findings in a moot court setting in order to prepare us to present information to a lay audience at trial. So, you know, sometimes the FBI, I should tell you, I'm involved right now in a case. It's the Keith Raniere Nexium case. I don't know if you've heard of it, but there's a guy named Keith Raniere who was accused of, you know, taking women and branding them and making them sex slaves. He's this self-help guru. I had never heard of him before I retired and started looking at this case. But the important part is that the FBI court examiners in this case messed up in a gigantic way.
Mm.
We talk about that process of identification, collection, preservation. It all kind of went out the window because in this case, there are only two pieces of digital forensic evidence that was used at trial, and both of them were tampered with. And well, the most obvious one is that there's a CF card, a compact flash card in a camera that was the last access dates were updated while in the custody of the FBI. So someone at the very least looked at it in the FBI without a write blocker. And I won't go into all the details of the case. I mean, you could look it up and Google my name and Keith Raniere and see all the times. My findings are published also on this case. But one of the things that was most atrocious, disgusting, I don't know how you would describe it, things in this case where we were pushing the fact that at trial they used a piece of evidence that was obviously altered while in the custody of the FBI. And through a bunch of filings going back and forth for, Rule 33, which is a request for new trial filings, I wanted to share this with you at some point today. The government's response to this idea that the government had altered a key piece of evidence, this is what they said, and I wanted to read this to you word for word. The access was not the result of law enforcement tampering, as Ranieri's motion claims. Rather, having no reason to believe that the metadata of the contents of the camera card had any evidentiary value, law enforcement agents directed that a photograph technician copy the photographs from the camera in order to provide the photographs more expeditiously to defense counsel. So right there, they're saying that having no reason to believe that the metadata of the contents was of any evidentiary value, their whole case was metadata. Their whole case in this particular case was looking at the metadata of the photographs and saying because of the if you know what EXIF data is in photographs, when the photograph was actually taken, because of the EXIF data and because of the file system metadata, those photographs were aged are dated to a point where the subject of those photographs was 15 years old, therefore it's child pornography. That was basically their whole case digitally. And to admit in a court filing that they didn't think that the metadata was important, so they just gave it to some photograph technician that they didn't disclose and who is not on the chain of custody. And
Well,
by the way, they
yeah,
admitted in
and
court
if
that
you
it was
could
me
get,
a
given to the
headache.
forensic examiner in an unsealed plastic baggie.
Oh,
Okay. So
wow,
it is, and it
well,
goes on. I mean, it is one of the worst examples of, the forensics process totally failing. And I take it a little personally because I taught in that program. Fortunately, I didn't teach the knuckleheads who actually did this. They weren't my students, but I taught in the program, so I know what they have been taught to do and to not do, and they completely failed in that regard.
I feel like a disclaimer thing should go. Disclaimer: I did not train these knuckleheads.
make that happen. We'll flow that across the screen.
Right,
There you
right.
go.
Um, so,
Actually, wait.
so
Actually, Andrew, I have a question regarding
yeah,
this. It
please,
actually
please, Angelo,
stems
'cause
directly from this.
there's a
So,
lot to unparse here.
yeah. We may have to have you back. Um,
Sure.
we have. I've been through stuff like this in the past, and one of the things is trying to get want something meaningful to law enforcement, but also something we would tend to correct grab everything and just shove it at law enforcement as if that's magically going to make something better. Um, and is there a more constructive way to bring and give evidence to the FBI or a law enforcement agency that can help them? In the end, I had an issue. Somebody did something bad. I want their help. How do I do that in a constructive way that helps them get to the point quicker, better, and faster, and not touch all the pictures?
That's the key. What do I do and what I don't do? I
Yeah.
think, yeah,
Right.
that's a great
Right. Yeah. Forensically, I mean, if we're just talking about handing over evidence to the FBI, I mean, I say we, my former agency, the FBI, the law enforcement agency. So we bring things to court. I mean, that's the whole purpose of forensics. Forensics means, right, you're taking it in a court situation and it'll hold up under legal scrutiny that way. In order to do that, it has to be preserved in a way where it can hold up to that scrutiny. Unlike the case that I just described to you, um, you want to, have someone that's certified in the tools that that they are using. And if you don't have anybody on your workforce to do that, then you can hire somebody to do that that has those kind of credentials. Um, hopefully you have somebody trained in at least preservation, so you can create forensic images, you can do memory dumps, uh, knowing that doing a memory dump itself will change the memory. Okay, but you write those things down, and that's something else that a lot of people forget to do, is take notes of what you're doing. One of the things they pounded into our heads, at the SANS Institute, and I have a second master's degree in information security engineering from the SANS Institute. Gone through a lot of their courses. I have 8 of their certifications. Um, One of the things they pound into our heads is that if you're going too fast to take notes, then you're going too fast. Okay. If you cannot document what you're doing,
Mm.
it is not going to help when you go to court. Now, it might help you get somebody fired. Okay. If you identify, maybe it's an insider threat and you identify the person inside the organization that, that's responsible for the malfeasance, you can certainly, you don't have a Fourth Amendment right, with respect to the organization. You have a Fourth Amendment right with respect to the United States Constitution. So you need to be able to preserve evidence in a way that protects those rights and that will ultimately be upheld in a court situation. So yeah, don't mess with the evidence. And if you do have to, in the case of a memory dump, then take notes of what you're doing, exactly what you're doing, and what your steps are.
So for a small medium business that believes that they had a some type of event, they're not quite sure. Maybe it's a breach, maybe it's some type of activity. Timing is of the essence because you make a very valid point. The whole point of authorities is to prepare for trial. And I think you used the terminology before we started this. It's right of bang. And I guess the sequence in the timeline would be somebody has intent, somebody does an act, and to the right of it is where authorities come in to pick up the pieces, to reconstruct it, to be able to forensically capture the evidence as intact and with the integrity in mind to prosecute somebody when they find out who did it. To the left of bang, or well, let's start at the left of bang, the intent, right? We don't know who's going to be the threat actor against us. And if you were a diver, you probably heard this before. Plan your dive, dive your plan, right? Make plans up front because if something goes bump in the night, you better know what to do. So it really begs the question of there's and Angela can probably speak more about this, the incident response planning, building the plan. What's
Right.
happen? What do I do? What's my script to do this? And all those things that you just gave with um preserving, don't touch, do this, don't do this. That should be part of that incident response plan, should it not?
Right. Right. And that's the key is knowing. Okay, well, there's 2 questions, right?
Yeah.
There's one question about, how do you prepare to avoid being hacked? And then there's another question which is more relevant. How do you prepare your organization for the inevitability that you're going to be hacked, right?
Ah,
There's kind of 2 separate questions a little bit. You can take steps in the preparation phase, the SANS, 6 they have 6 they have 6 steps. NIST actually mirrors those. I don't know who came up with it first, but yeah, preparation, and then you identify what the threat is. You have containment, you have eradication, you have recovery, then you have lessons learned, right? So those are steps that a lot of these frameworks kind of share. But in the preparation stage, you have things that you can do to harden your system to try to avoid being hacked. But then you have the ultimate inevitability that you will be hacked at some point. Um, so but I think the answer to both of those is the plan. It is the for your organization, what plan do you have? And there's a lot of help out there to help organizations, small to medium sized organizations for their plan. NIST has a special publication 800, what is it, dash 53?
Yes.
Those are the security controls, and dot 61 is the instant handling guide. So there are things out, and it's very detailed. Like it's almost like a laundry list of things that you should prepare for and look out for. The Center for Internet Security has the critical controls. As a matter of fact, SANS. I'm not here to sell you on a SANS course, but they have a couple of very good courses. Well,
Right.
they have a lot of good courses. The one's relevant to what I'm saying here. Okay. So one of them is called the Critical Controls Certification, and that comes from the Center for Internet Security. It used to be 20. Now I can't remember now. I think it went down to 18. They consolidated, but these are controls that you have that anybody can follow, and they're set up so that you can audit your own system or have someone come in and audit, see how you're handling how many admin accounts that you have, how many, your inventory, something just as basic as keeping track of the stuff that you have, so that if you see something on your network that you don't recognize, you know, you can look at that. So I mean, it's and then go. What was I talking about? Okay, so you have the so you have the helps for NIST. You have securing the human, which is something that SANS does. Almost every university that teaches cybersecurity has some sort of patching the human. Nova Southeastern University has that, securing the human. Everybody really recognizes the fact that you can have the best security system, the best intrusion detection system, prevention system, the best SIM, the best best everything, but it takes one person in your organization to click on a PDF file or a link in a phishing scam, and then it's like you gave away the keys to the kingdom. So they really emphasize um, the other SANS course I was going to highlight is their information security awareness course. And at the end of that, you're actually creating an information security awareness program for an organization. And I've actually taught this overseas. The people in the Philippines loved it. But it's basically, it's not just about taking an annual information security mandatory training and kind of clicking through that. It's a whole program. So it has to do with how you provision your bring your own devices. It has to do with uh, uh, creating a program where you're testing the phishing attempts on your people, and
Right.
if they do fall for the phishing, what happens? Do they get some sort of remediation? You set up. I mean, this is what a lot of people miss. Also, is you need to have a system and an email where people can report things. Like if they know that they screwed up, they knew that they weren't supposed to click on that, but they did, and oh my gosh, what happened? You need a plan who to contact in your organization. If you get a phishing, what you perceive to be a phishing email, what do you do with that? Do you send it to abuse@yourcompany.com? What is the procedure? So all of this is in the preparation phase of this, and like I said, an information security program where you're actually changing the information security awareness culture of your organization, I think is the most effective way to approach it.
Wow. That's good stuff. I guess okay, so that's the left of bang, right? So that's the preparatory plan your action type stuff. Moving down the timeline to center the bang, the action, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times companies don't know what to do and a panic ensues, right? Angelo, you probably seen this too many times, right? The first inclination is unplug everything. Lock the doors, nobody leaves the room, call 911, call your buddy in the FBI, right? And you're waiting for helicopters to come down so people can rappel down with their computers and their handguns and with the vests with big emblazoned agency names across there and everybody musters around your parking lot. Um, Not so, right? I mean, the first I mean, Angelo, first thing you would do is what?
In the event like that, I mean, in real life, I
Yeah,
would,
I mean,
I'd one first try to
you've been in this
assess the
situation.
information,
Yeah,
assess what's going on. Is there really a breach, or a B word, we should say? Is there a materiality to that? Secondly, is how broad is that issue or problem? And thirdly, does it reach a point where I need to involve anything beyond internal affairs with regard to what I'm doing? Once it reaches beyond that, my next step would be contact an attorney and the insurance, maybe in different orders, because I want to make sure they're engaged. Because one of the things that you end up doing is you start looking at the privileges of conversations and stuff like that, and you want it coordinated in such a way that if I do need to engage outside help, I want that help to be coordinated and managed in a way that's going to create the best opportunity for my company to protect itself. And so that's when, and typically the engaged lawyer for the cybersecurity lawyer would be the one who would reach out to a law enforcement agency like an FBI or such like that. Now, this may all happen within microseconds of each other if you have a plan. Engage, because you also have to, before you reach out to the lawyer, you have to, you have to tell the executive staff this is going on. You have to make sure that everybody's aware that you now are executing plan crisis management, which would also involve some type of talking points, restriction of communication, all those things. All that happens at once. If you're an SMB, you throw up your hands, you go, oh my God, everything's going to pieces and I don't know what to do. Let me call my local law enforcement. What happens? They ask a bunch of questions and most likely they may not know what to do. They may not know the next step or what you should do. So this is where it's important to get some type of cohesive plan together before you engage the enemy in this case. Every plan, doesn't survive the first test with the enemy. But if you have a plan, at least you have a coordinated effort that goes and you can actually walk forward with. So these are my random thoughts of the day. So I don't want to act like that they're the answer to everything, but having a plan and testing the plan staves
Yes.
off a lot of issues. It's when you don't and you're reacting after the fact is when you're picking up the pieces. So
you said something very interesting, a cyber attorney, right? And you give it some thought and you go, okay, so why is a cyber attorney an interesting option or an interesting play? Usually it's going to be through the insurance agent that has some type of attorney that's representing the insurance company or whatever. But a cyber attorney seems to be in a growing field, if you will, in the legal side of things because of something that Rick said, preserving the evidence, right? The first thing you want to do is not manipulate any evidence because it has to be collected. It has to be analyzed by investigators for the forensics or the incident responses, right? The teams want to have as much of this information untouched, I would imagine, so that they can do their proper due diligence, their tracing, and start, as Rick said, writing it down so you're not rushing through stuff and possibly meddling with the evidence, but then also being able to trace what's happened, how it's occurred, what impact it's provided in the environment, and if money's exchanged, where did it go? How did it happen? And the attorney is a good um go between that part of the science of preserving that and the customer and the authorities, and is kind of a good savant for all of these to be able to bring this in. I mean, Rick, is that something that you're seeing more and more of in this industry? And do you see success in this?
Various degrees of success. First
Okay.
of all, it's hard to get a good cyber attorney, and usually it's not the lead attorney on the of the victim, right? It's usually someone that they hire on because they have very specialized skills. It's always good to have somebody like this, and on the prosecutor side, or the investigation side, we also have attorneys that have been specially trained up as well. Like in the Department of Justice, we have certain attorneys that we can go to, and we can talk the talk, and they know what we're talking about. If you try to prosecute some of the stuff with a regular attorney, their eyes roll. And they try to get you to say stuff that isn't true.
Right.
I don't know if you remember the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando,
Oh, yeah.
the gay bar shoot up.
Yeah.
So Miami has had a bunch of these shootings. By the Miami FBI office where I worked had a lot of these things. But there was a case, and I'm not mentioning any names, but basically there was a piece of digital evidence that we processed, our squad processed, and the prosecutor wanted us to represent something that wasn't true about what we found because they didn't understand it. They didn't understand, how flash media works and how it moves data from one place to another. Instead of deleting and overwriting, it actually copies data. You know how it works. And she wanted to say, well, no, there was, this person searched this many times. And we said, we had to explain, and it takes time to explain why they're wrong. And so it's good to have somebody on the victim side and on the prosecution side who can speak the language of what we're talking about. The other thing that we haven't really talked about is the flow of information, of investigative information. And that is, it's always a negotiating piece, because as a rule, the FBI isn't going to share what they have found with the victim. Okay. So it's a lot of times it's like a black hole. It's a one-way street. You're sending FBI all the information they want. If they request it, you give it to them, and then you get no information back because they don't want to compromise the investigation. Um, you know, one of the cases I worked at a very ancillary, but I was tasked to go down to let's just call it a Latin American country, because I'm not sure if it's been declassified yet, but it was believed to be in this country the computer that one of the very first victims of the WannaCry ransomware exploit.
Okay.
And so I was sent down there because I speak Spanish, and I asked them. I was coordinating with the FBI's legal attaché office and with the country's intelligence service, their version of the CIA, basically. And I told them very specifically, leave the computers on. I want to go down and I want to dump the memory. Okay, that's one of the things that I very specifically told them. Because by this time it had already, a lot of people, we wanted to know the processes that were involved, and how it coordinated with things that we know indicators of compromise
I
of
feel a
of
punchline
other
coming,
actors.
right?
I
What's
know.
that?
I'm waiting for that.
I feel it coming.
Too.
Yes. Okay. So you know how this ends, right? Well, actually, there is a little twist at the end. So I get down there, and I said, okay, when are we going to the site? And they said, oh, just come in here. And then they had a conference room, and they had all the computers off, disconnected. I'm like, oh crap. And I had a trainee with me, and I said, okay, well, let's just start, getting what we can. It's basically dead box forensics at this point. So we started copying, and then I opened up one of the laptops, and it turned on. Like, oh crap, and it was unlocked. So we said, okay, we're going to get at least one RAM dump. So
Wow.
we did. Okay, I used dump it. And so we got this RAM dump, and we sent it back to this was a joint Los Angeles, New York case. So I didn't get to actually analyze it myself, but I sent the RAM dump and everything that we collected back to the other cart elements of those cases. And as it turns out, that was the game changer in this case. And the next week, I can say this because Trump announced it, that it was the North Koreans that they had identified as the people behind it, and it was based on that RAM dump. So
That's
that's
awesome.
another another lesson is make sure you get the memory. If you can get it, get the memory, because you're leaving gigabytes
Right.
of information on the table if you don't get that memory.
Yeah. So, and you know what? There's one point I want to make in all this evidence gathering. What we're talking about is basically assembling a prosecution after the fact. What we're not talking about is stopping the bleeding. You eventually need to stop the bleeding in your organization to keep lock down the exits and make sure that people can't exfiltrate anything else or cause any more issues or do whatever.
Right.
This there's a fine there's a you want to preserve the evidence, but you also want to keep the business operational. So there's an issue at hand with sometimes that gets confused. Sometimes things are assumed like, well, isn't the FBI going to fix it?
No, the FBI the FBI is not a first responder, should not be on your first responder list. The FBI is very good at keeping track of past bad things that have happened and can relate bad things. One of the things that the FBI did that was very good is establish the Internet Crime Complaint Center, IC3.gov, right? And that's for anybody. If anybody, and this is what I tell people when they because they know my background, they say, "What can I do? This guy is trying to extort me, blah blah blah." I said, well, you can go to ic3.gov and put a complaint in and give them all the information that you have, and I show them how to get, their header information on their email if it's email based. But they will correlate IP addresses and other indicators of these bad guys and what they're doing and how they exploit people. They can put all that stuff together, and then they can package it and give it to a field office to investigate. If they see a lot of commonalities, then that could be a case. But if it's only like someone lost, $5,000 on an eBay purchase, the FBI is not going to investigate. In the Southern District of Florida, where I worked in Miami, the minimum fraud, if you're talking about any kind of fraud, that would be investigated by the Southern District of Florida U.S. Attorney's Office, minimum $1 million. Okay. So, or they're not going to touch it.
Right.
Yeah,
So
they don't have time, right?
no, yeah, because there are so much more fraud that's above $1 million that they'll never be able to do that. So what they do is they can put it together. If someone's out for $10,000 or $15,000, go through the Internet Crime Complaint Center, and then if they can aggregate the losses into some sort of a RICO conspiracy or something like that, then it would justify an investigation. But there are so many victims and so many bad guys out there. There's no way law enforcement would ever be able to keep up with everything individually.
Well, and if it's
Andrew, I think we needed to have this guy back because there's so
I'm
much
telling
more
you,
of this can we have to open.
I agreed. I mean, and if it's RICO, wouldn't it indicate that they have to have samples from a lot of different victims because it's
Sure,
racketeering at a
absolutely.
bigger
Yeah,
level.
all the predicate offenses would be built up
Right.
by these individual acts. Mhm.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Would love to have you back, Rick. I mean, you're just a wealth of information, and you've certainly dispelled that helicopters are not going to be flying to our rescue anytime soon. And there's not a lady named Penelope back there with her fuzzy toys and stuff that's going to be able to hack our street cameras and everything else, and our Ring doorbells or whatever doorbells that you have to be able to get that beautiful picture that just kind of zooms into license plates in the middle of the night. So, okay. Um, and I guess in the last bit, we always like to have our thoughts of the day as far as just kind of what we end up talking about, right? Or quotes of the day. Do you have any quote of the day that you can share with us that maybe can either shed some humor, some light, or some wise sage advice?
And given your age in information security, can I call you Dr. Gopher instead of
Oh my gosh. Of the days of Gopher and Jughead and Veronica, all the
Oh, wow.
bulletin board systems. Holy smokes. Um,
I just want
Okay,
to
I guess I
point
showed
out,
my age as well.
Angelo knows those references too, and so do I. So we cast no stone.
Trumpet windsock? What's that?
oh my God. Okay, so my favorite quote is it can be actually applied to anything, including cybersecurity, especially when you consider that the human being is really the weakest link in this whole chain, right?
Okay.
Um, so my quote is it's attributed to John Wayne. I don't know. I've had mixed, answers on whether or not he actually said it, but he said, "Life is hard. It's harder when you're stupid."
Oh, Angelo, Rick's going to fit right in.
Co-host number 3.
Coming to a podcast near you. Wow.
You want to do yours first, or you want me to do mine? Your
Go
choice.
ahead, and I'll finish it off.
Dr. Gopher, we thank you for that. My question I want you to ponder for the next time you come in is the organization CART that you belong to. Did they create an acronym called HORSE so you can do CART before the horse? No, don't bother.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
We can make one up.
it's anyway. My words of wisdom are: complexity is the enemy of security. Meaning, if you can't explain it, you can't understand it, and if you can't understand or explain it, you're probably not secure. So, reduce complexity, be simple, get back to basics.
There you go.
Andrew.
And mine is the best security device resides between our ears if we so choose to use it. So with that, we do thank you, Rick, for your sage advice and your insights as to our topic today, incident response, forensics. Definitely want you to come back. Had a great opportunity to kind of pick your brain on that, but we'll have more topics. I'm sure that we will love to have you back. So thank you once again for coming and joining us in this podcast. To our listeners, please like and subscribe. That helps us get people like Rick on our show. And so we thank you for your comments and look forward to our next episode. So take care and thank you.
Thanks for having me.